No one was allowed near the dragon's egg until a human boy touched it. Before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. The ancient stone temple stood silent on the mountaintop, its weathered walls bathed in the golden light of twin suns. Inside, behind layers of security fields and guardian drones, lay the most precious artifact in the Andromeda Alliance, the last known Draconis egg in existence. For over 3 centuries, the egg had remained untouched behind its protective barriers. The Galactic Council had declared it sacred, forbidden to all. After countless failed attempts to hatch, it had only resulted in the egg's crystalline surface growing harder and more impenetrable. Scientists, mystics, and even the most advanced AI systems had all tried to unlock its secrets, but the egg remained dormant, its potential locked within a shell that reflected the stars themselves. Miles Parker was 12 years old, skinny with perpetually untied shoelaces and a mop of brown hair that refused to stay combed. He hadn't meant to be separated from his tour group. One moment he was trailing behind his classmates on their field trip to Sanctuary Moon. The next he was wandering down an unmarked corridor after spotting what looked like a glowing butterfly. "Hello," Miles called out, his voice echoing down the empty hallway. The butterfly, if that's what it had been, was nowhere to be seen. Miles checked his communicator, but the device showed no signal. Great. Dad was going to kill him when he found out Miles had wandered into a restricted area of the most important temple in the galaxy. The hallway opened into a circular chamber with a domed ceiling. Miles gasped as he looked up. The dome was transparent, revealing the spectacular view of Sanctuary Moon's rings and the glittering expanse of space beyond. But what truly captured his attention was the object at the center of the room. Floating in a column of shimmering blue light was an egg-shaped object about the size of a basketball. Its surface was unlike anything Miles had ever seen, pearlescent and shifting with colors that seemed to flow like liquid beneath a crystalline shell. "Whoa," Miles whispered, stepping closer. He knew he shouldn't approach it. Every kid in the galaxy knew the story of the dragon's egg. It was the last hope for the extinct Draconis species, beings of legend who had once been the guardians of peace throughout the known universe. The egg had been discovered after the great catastrophe that had wiped out the Draconis 300 years ago. Warning signs in 17 languages surrounded the pedestal. "Do not approach." Lethal security measures in effect. Miles should have turned around. He should have found his way back to his class. Instead, he took another step forward. "That's strange," he murmured. The security field that should have been active around the egg was flickering, creating gaps in the protective barrier. As Miles watched, the field seemed to stabilize, then flicker again, as if responding to his presence. A soft humming filled the chamber, and Miles felt a strange warmth spreading through his chest. Something was pulling him forward, a feeling he couldn't explain, like homesickness for a place he'd never been. "Hello, young human," a voice said from behind him. Miles spun around, nearly losing his balance. Standing in the doorway was a tall, slender figure with iridescent skin and eyes that contained galaxies. A Stellaran, one of the ancient species that had helped found the Andromeda Alliance. "I'm sorry," Miles stammered. "I got lost from my tour group." "I wasn't trying to." The Stellaran raised a 6-fingered hand. "Be at peace, child. I am Eltaris, guardian of the sanctuary. It seems you have found your way here through no coincidence." "What do you mean?" Miles asked, glancing back at the egg. To his shock, the security field had completely disappeared, and the egg was pulsing with a gentle light that matched the rhythm of his heartbeat. Eltaris moved into the room with fluid grace. In 300 years, the egg has never responded to any presence. Yet it calls to you. The Stellaran's voice held wonder and confusion. The prophecy speaks of a kindred soul who would awaken what sleeps, but none expected it would be. "A human kid?" Miles finished, understanding the Stellaran's hesitation. Humans were among the newer species in the Alliance, often viewed as unpredictable and primitive by the older races. Indeed, Eltaris studied Miles with those cosmic eyes. The security systems should have activated the moment you entered this chamber. Instead, they have disengaged. The egg's glow intensified, casting a golden light across the room. Miles felt the strange pull grow stronger. "What should I do?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "That," said Altaris, "is a question I cannot answer. The ancient texts say only the kindred soul will know." Miles turned back to the egg. The pulling sensation was now almost physical, as if invisible threads were drawing him forward. Without conscious thought, he found himself standing directly before the pedestal. "Miles Parker," a sharp voice cut through the chamber. "Step away from that artifact immediately." Miles looked up to see his teacher, Ms. Vega, standing in the doorway, her face pale with horror. Behind her crowded his classmates, their expressions ranging from awe to envy to fear. "I can't," Miles said simply, and he realized it was true. The connection between him and the egg was too strong now to resist. "Guardian Altaris," Ms. Vega appealed to the Stellaran. "Please activate the security fields. This boy doesn't understand what he's doing." "On the contrary," Altaris replied calmly, "I believe he may be the only one who does." Before anyone could say another word, Miles reached out and placed his palm against the smooth surface of the egg. The world exploded into light. Miles felt a surge of energy course through his body, a torrent of information flooding his mind. Images flashed before his eyes, vast beings with wings that spanned the distance between stars, ancient civilizations rising and falling, a terrible darkness consuming world after world, and finally, a desperate plan, a single egg, encoded with the collective consciousness of an entire species, waiting for the right soul to awaken it. When the light faded, Miles found himself on his knees, hands still pressed against the egg. But the egg had changed. Cracks had appeared across its surface, glowing with golden light from within. "It's hatching," Altaris whispered, awe evident in the Stellaran's melodic voice. "After 3 centuries, it's finally hatching." The entire room had fallen silent. Even Ms. Vega stood frozen, her reprimand forgotten as she watched history unfold. The cracks spread across the egg's surface, the light growing brighter until Miles had to squint against its brilliance. Then, with a sound like distant thunder, the shell split open. Miles expected to see a creature emerge, perhaps a small, lizard-like being that would grow into the magnificent dragons of legend. Instead, the shell dissolved into particles of light that swirled around him, spiraling upward before settling onto his skin like golden dust. "What's happening?" Miles gasped, watching as the particles sank beneath his skin, leaving traces of luminescence that pulsed in time with his heartbeat. Altaris approached slowly, eyes wide with disbelief. The Draconis were not merely physical beings, Miles Parker. They were creatures of energy and consciousness as much as flesh and bone. The Stellaran knelt before him. "It seems you have not simply hatched the egg, you have bonded with it." "Bonded? What does that mean?" Miles looked down at his hands, where faint, scale-like patterns were forming beneath his skin. "It means," said a new voice, "that we have much to discuss." The crowd at the doorway parted as a figure in formal Galactic Council robes strode into the room. Counselor Zara Thane, Earth's representative to the Alliance, and one of the most powerful humans in the galaxy, looked from Miles to the empty pedestal and back again. "Guardian Altaris, please escort the other children back to their shuttle," she said, her tone brooking no argument. "Ms. Vega, you may stay with your student. It appears young Mr. Parker has just become the most important human in the galaxy." Miles felt a flutter of panic. "I didn't mean to." "Of course you didn't," Counselor Thane said, her expression softening as she looked at him. "No one could have predicted this. But the fact remains that you've just bonded with the collective essence of the Draconis, a species that once protected the entire galaxy from threats beyond imagination." "The Void Hunters," Altaris said quietly. Counselor Thane nodded grimly. "Yes, and if our deep space readings are correct, we'll need the Draconis power again very soon." Miles felt a chill run down his spine. "What are Void Hunters?" Instead of answering, Counselor Thane looked at his chest. I think you already know. Miles was about to protest when he felt it, knowledge unfurling in his mind like the pages of a book opening one by one. The Void Hunters, ancient entities that fed on stars, draining them of energy and leaving dead worlds in their wake. The Draconis had been the galaxy's defenders for millennia, the only beings powerful enough to drive the Hunters back into the depths of intergalactic space. The catastrophe, Miles said slowly, the information becoming clearer in his mind. It wasn't a natural disaster that killed the Draconis. It was a battle. They sacrificed themselves to push the Void Hunters back. Yes, Eltaris confirmed. And they left behind a single egg, containing their combined essence, to be awakened when the Hunters returned. Which they have, Counselor Thane added. Our most distant outposts have gone dark. The pattern matches historical records of Void Hunter activities. Miles looked from the counselor to the Guardian and back again. But why me? I'm just a kid from Earth. I'm nobody special. Eltaris made a sound that might have been laughter. The Draconis would disagree. They chose you, Miles Parker. Now we must discover why. A tremor ran through the temple, subtle but unmistakable. The lights flickered, and for a moment, the transparency of the dome seemed to waver. What was that? Ms. Vega asked, speaking for the first time since the egg had hatched. Counselor Thane's communicator chimed, and her face paled as she read the message. It's begun, she said quietly. A Void Hunter has entered the outer reaches of this system. Miles felt a sudden surge of heat in his chest, and the scale-like patterns on his skin glowed brighter. Something was awakening inside him. Something ancient and powerful and not entirely human. I can feel it, he whispered. It's coming for the egg for me. Then we need to move quickly, Counselor Thane said. Guardian Eltaris, we need to get Miles to the council chamber. If the legends are true, he may be the only one who can help us now. As they hurried from the chamber, Miles cast one last look at the empty pedestal where the egg had rested for centuries. His life had changed forever the moment he'd touched it, but somehow, deep in his newly awakened consciousness, he knew this had always been his destiny. In the darkness of space beyond Sanctuary Moon, something vast and hungry turned its attention toward the tiny human boy who now carried the legacy of its ancient enemy. The final battle for the galaxy was about to begin. Miles Parker, 12 years old with untied shoelaces and the power of an extinct species flowing through his veins, straightened his shoulders and followed Counselor Thane into an uncertain future. The dragon had awakened, and it had chosen him. The temple trembled again, more violently this time. Through the transparent dome, Miles saw a strange darkness spreading across the stars, like ink spilled across the cosmos. We need to hurry, Counselor Thane urged, guiding Miles toward a hidden elevator at the back of the chamber. Wait, Miles said, stopping suddenly. The knowledge from the egg was still unfolding in his mind, revealing secrets long forgotten. We can't leave. Not yet. Miles, there's no time, Ms. Vega insisted, her teacher's authority reasserting itself despite the extraordinary circumstances. There's something here, Miles continued, turning back toward the center of the chamber. Something hidden beneath the pedestal. The Draconis left more than just their essence. Eltaris studied him with those galaxy-filled eyes. What do you see, kindred soul? Miles approached the pedestal again, guided by instinct and ancient memory. He placed his hand on the floor beside it, and the stone rippled like water beneath his touch. A compartment opened, revealing a small, crystalline orb no bigger than a marble. The Heart of Flames, Miles whispered, the name coming to him from somewhere deep in his newly expanded consciousness. He picked up the orb, and it pulsed with the same golden light that now flowed beneath his skin. The weapon of the Draconis, Eltaris breathed. It was thought to be lost with them. Not lost, Miles said. Hidden. Waiting. He closed his fingers around the orb, and it melted into his palm, joining with the energy already flowing through him. Now we can go. As they hurried through the corridors of the ancient temple, Miles felt the presence of the Void Hunter growing stronger. a cold emptiness that threatened to devour everything in its path. But alongside that terror, he felt something else, a fierce determination that wasn't entirely his own. The Draconis essence within him was responding to the threat, preparing for the confrontation to come. Miles didn't know if he was ready to face what lay ahead. But as the golden light pulsed beneath his skin and the knowledge of an ancient species unfolded in his mind, he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He wouldn't be facing it alone. The dragon had awakened, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The evacuation sirens wailed across Sanctuary Moon as Miles followed Counselor Thane and Guardian Eltaris through a series of increasingly secure corridors. Ms. Vega trailed behind them, her professional composure slipping. Counselor Thane pressed her palm against a scanner, and the door split along an invisible seam, revealing the council chamber beyond. Miles had seen images of the legendary room in his history textbooks, but nothing had prepared him for the reality. The chamber was circular, with a domed ceiling that displayed a real-time view of surrounding space. The walls were lined with transparent data screens showing information from across the galaxy. At the center stood a round table with 13 seats, representing the 13 founding species of the Andromeda Alliance. Most of the seats were already filled. Beings of various forms, some humanoid, others decidedly not, turned to stare as Miles entered. He recognized several from his studies: the crystalline Lumine, the multi-limbed Taraxis, the gaseous Nebulons contained in their environmental suits. All of them were watching him with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright suspicion. "Counselor Thane," a deep voice rumbled from the head of the table. "We expected you sooner." The speaker was a massive Krell, his stone-like skin etched with glowing runes of office. High Counselor Draken was the most powerful political figure in the Alliance, and he did not look pleased. "My apologies, High Counselor," Thane replied, guiding Miles forward. "We had to retrieve something from the temple." Draken's gaze shifted to Miles, his eyes narrowing. "This is the human child? The one who interfered with the sacred egg?" Miles felt a flash of indignation rise within him, his own emotion amplified by the Draconis essence. "I didn't interfere," he said before Thane could answer for him. "I was chosen." A murmur ran through the assembled counselors. Draken's expression hardened further. "Chosen?" The Krell's voice was thick with skepticism. "The Draconis were the greatest warriors the galaxy has ever known. Why would they choose a human child as their vessel?" Miles felt the patterns on his skin flare with golden light in response to his rising emotions. Several counselors gasped. "I don't know why they chose me," Miles admitted. "But they did. And right now, there's a void hunter heading straight for us, so maybe we should focus on that instead of questioning their judgment." The chamber fell silent. Even Draken seemed taken aback by the boy's directness. Eltaris stepped forward, graceful and serene despite the tension. "The human speaks truth. Our long-range sensors confirm the approach of a void hunter. It will reach Sanctuary Moon within 6 standard hours." "One hunter we can handle," said a Lumine counselor, her crystalline form refracting light as she moved. "Our defense systems will be useless," Miles interrupted, the knowledge flowing from the Draconis consciousness. "This isn't just any hunter. It's a sovereign." The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Miles could see from the council members' expressions that they understood the implications, even if he was only beginning to grasp them himself. "Impossible," Draken growled. "The sovereigns were destroyed in the final battle with the Draconis." "Not destroyed," Miles corrected. "Wounded. Driven back. But not destroyed." He placed his hands on the council table, and images formed in the holographic display above. Memories from the Draconis consciousness showing vast, shadow-like entities battling winged beings of light across the void of space. They've been healing, gathering strength. Now they're back, and this one is just the first. The council chamber erupted into chaotic discussion. Miles caught fragments of debate, proposals for evacuation, arguments about military response, questions about the reliability of the information. Counselor Thane raised her voice above the din. "The boy speaks with the knowledge of the Draconis. We would be fools to ignore their warnings. And what would you have us do, Counselor? Draken demanded. Hand the fate of the Alliance over to a human child? No offense to your species, he added with a glance toward Miles that suggested he meant exactly the opposite. Before Thane could respond, the chamber shook violently. The space display above the table flickered, showing a disturbance at the edge of the system, a region of absolute darkness that seemed to consume the stars themselves. It's accelerating, Eltaris reported, reading data from a nearby console. The hunter will reach us within 2 hours, not 6. Panic flashed across several counselors' faces. Miles felt a strange calm settling over him. Part resignation, part determination, and part something older and wiser than his 12 years. We need to evacuate the moon, he said firmly. Get everyone to safety. And then what? Draken challenged. Run? Hide. The hunters won't stop with Sanctuary Moon. They'll consume every star, every world in their path. Miles met the High Counselor's gaze. I'm not suggesting we run. I'm suggesting we fight, but on our terms, not theirs. And how do you propose we do that, young human? A Nebulon counselor asked, her voice hissing through her environmental suit speakers. Miles closed his eyes, searching through the vast repository of knowledge now accessible to him. The Draconis had faced this threat before. They had strategies, weapons, techniques. The Heart of Flames, he said, opening his eyes. The weapon I recovered from the temple. It was designed specifically to combat the hunters. A weapon that only the Draconis could wield, Draken pointed out. Miles held up his hand, letting the scale-like patterns shimmer across his skin. I carry their essence now, their knowledge, their power. He turned to Eltaris. I need access to a high point, somewhere I can channel energy without interference. The Stellaran considered for a moment. The beacon spire would serve. It's the highest point on Sanctuary Moon, originally designed as a focusing point for interstellar communications. Perfect, Miles nodded. Meanwhile, the Alliance forces need to distract the hunter, keep it occupied while I prepare. You're asking us to risk our fleet as a diversion? Draken asked incredulously. I'm asking you to give me time to save your worlds, Miles countered. Unless you have a better plan? The chamber fell silent again. Miles could see the struggle playing out on the counselors' faces, their reluctance to place their faith in a human child versus the stark reality of the approaching threat. Finally, Draken gave a curt nod. Begin the evacuation, he ordered. And contact the fleet. Tell them. He hesitated, looking at Miles with a mixture of doubt and desperate hope. Tell them to buy the boy some time. As the counselors dispersed to carry out their assignments, Miles felt the weight of what lay ahead settling onto his shoulders. He was 12 years old. 6 months ago, his biggest concern had been making the school hoverball team. Now, the fate of countless lives depended on him mastering powers he barely understood. Counselor Thane placed a hand on his shoulder. Are you sure about this, Miles? No one would blame you if you chose to evacuate with the others. Miles looked up at her, surprised by the question. The Draconis chose me for a reason. I can't run away from that. He glanced down at his hands, where the golden patterns pulsed in time with his heartbeat. Besides, I'm not sure I could escape the hunter even if I wanted to. It's coming for me, for this power. Better to face it on our terms. Thane studied him with newfound respect. Your parents would be proud. My parents, Miles groaned, suddenly remembering. They're going to kill me if the Void Hunter doesn't do it first. Despite the gravity of the situation, Thane laughed. I've already contacted them. They're being brought to the evacuation point. Her expression softened. You'll see them again, Miles. I promise. Miles nodded, hoping she was right. He turned to Eltaris. We should get to the beacon spire. I need to prepare. As they left the council chamber, Miles caught sight of Ms. Vega standing quietly to one side. She had been so stunned by the unfolding events that she had remained silent throughout the council meeting. Ms. Vega, Miles said, you should join the evacuation. His teacher seemed to snap out of her daze. Miles, I can't just leave you. I'm responsible for you. Not anymore, Miles said gently. Please, go with the others. Tell my classmates. He paused, trying to think of what to say to the kids who had been his peers just hours ago, before everything changed. Tell them I'm sorry I messed up the field trip. Miss Vega's eyes filled with tears, but she managed a wobbly smile. I think they'll forgive you. She hesitated, then pulled him into a quick hug. Be careful, Miles Parker. Then she was gone, hurrying to join the streams of people making their way to the evacuation ships. Miles watched her go, then turned his attention to what lay ahead. Let's go, he said to Altaris and Counselor Thane. We've got a hunter to catch. The beacon spire lived up to its name. Rising nearly a kilometer above the surrounding structures of Sanctuary Moon's main settlement, it was a slender needle of a tower topped with a crystalline array designed to focus and amplify signals across interstellar distances. As Miles stepped onto the observation platform at the spire's peak, he could feel energy humming through the structure. Not just technological power, but something more fundamental, like the tower had been built atop a natural wellspring of cosmic force. The ancient Draconis helped design this spire, Altaris explained, sensing Miles's awareness of the energy. They recognized the unique properties of this location. Miles nodded, feeling pieces of knowledge clicking into place in his mind. It's a nexus point, a place where the barriers between dimensions are naturally thinner. He walked to the center of the platform where a circular design was inlaid into the floor. This is where I need to be. Counselor Thane consulted her communicator. The evacuation is proceeding as quickly as possible, but we won't be able to get everyone off the moon in time. The Alliance fleet has engaged the hunter at the edge of the system, but there. She hesitated. They're being destroyed, Miles finished for her. He could feel it, the cold void consuming the brave ships that stood against it, like candles being snuffed out one by one. We need to hurry. He knelt at the center of the circular design and placed his palm against the floor. Immediately, the inlaid pattern began to glow with the same golden light that pulsed beneath his skin. The Draconis truly did help build this place, he murmured. They left tools for their successor, just in case. What do you need from us? Thane asked, watching as the glowing pattern expanded outward from Miles's touch. Nothing, Miles said. Just don't interrupt what happens next, no matter what it looks like. Before either of his companions could question him further, Miles closed his eyes and turned his focus inward. The Draconis essence responded immediately, surging through his consciousness like a wave of liquid fire. He let it come, surrendering to the ancient power while maintaining just enough of himself to direct its flow. The heart of flames, the tiny orb he had absorbed in the temple, began to pulse at his core. Miles reached for it mentally, finding it nestled at the center of his being like a second heart beating alongside his own. He drew upon its power, channeling it through the pathways that the Draconis essence had created within his body. On the observation platform, Altaris and Thane watched in awe as Miles began to glow from within. The scale-like patterns on his skin brightened until they were difficult to look at directly. The air around him shimmered with heat. Is this supposed to happen? Thane whispered to Altaris. The Stellaran's cosmic eyes were wide with wonder. The ancient text spoke of the Draconis transformation, but I never thought to witness it myself. Miles was only dimly aware of their conversation. His consciousness was expanding, reaching outward from his physical form. He could feel the approaching hunter more clearly now, a vast emptiness moving through space, consuming everything in its path. The Alliance ships were fighting valiantly, but their weapons were like pinpricks against the hunter's immense form. Miles pushed his awareness further, reaching toward the hunter. He needed to get its attention, to draw it away from the fleet and toward Sanctuary Moon, toward him. The heart of flames pulsed again, stronger this time, and Miles felt something new emerging from within. No, not new, ancient, primal, the true power of the Draconis. His body began to change. First came the pain, a burning sensation that started in his chest and spread outward along his limbs. His bones shifted beneath his skin, muscles stretched and reformed. He wanted to scream, but couldn't find his voice. The transformation was both excruciating and exhilarating, breaking him down and rebuilding him into something greater. Through eyes that were no longer entirely human, Miles saw Thane step backward in shock. Even Eltaris, who had lived for centuries and witnessed countless wonders, looked stunned. Where Miles had knelt moments before, a new being now rose to its feet. He still retained his human form, but it was overlaid with something else, a luminous, draconic energy body that surrounded and interpenetrated his physical form. Translucent wings of golden light extended from his back, spanning several meters across. His fingers ended in glowing claws, and when he spoke, his voice resonated with harmonics that no human throat could produce. "It worked," Miles said, examining his transformed state with a mixture of awe and trepidation. "The partial manifestation. I'm still me, but also Draconis," Eltaris finished, bowing deeply. "You honor us with your presence, Ancient One." Miles shook his head. "Not quite. I'm still Miles. Just more than I was before." He turned toward the sky, where the darkness of the Void Hunter was now visible even to normal eyes, a spreading shadow against the stars. "And now I need to finish what the Draconis started." He extended his wings of light, feeling the energy flow through them. With a powerful downstroke that sent shockwaves across the observation platform, Miles launched himself skyward. Flying came naturally to his transformed body. Each beat of his energy wings carried him higher, faster than should have been possible. The thin atmosphere of Sanctuary Moon gave way to the vacuum of space, but Miles found he had no need to breathe in this state. The Draconis essence sustained him, shielding his human core from the deadly conditions of space. As he soared away from the moon, Miles could see the devastation the Hunter had wrought. Dozens of Alliance ships drifted lifelessly, their systems drained of power. Others were still fighting, their weapons flaring against the darkness but having little effect. And then he saw the Hunter itself. No description could have prepared him for the reality. It was darkness given form, a vast, writhing shadow that seemed to exist in more dimensions than the eye could perceive. Where it moved, space itself distorted, light bent and died. At its center was something like a mouth, a vortex that pulled in energy, matter, even the fabric of reality. The Sovereign Void Hunter was larger than Miles had expected, larger than the memories in the Draconis consciousness had suggested. It had grown over the centuries, fed on countless stars across the dark spaces between galaxies. Now it had returned to feast on the worlds of the Alliance, starting with Sanctuary Moon and its potent energy nexus. Miles felt a moment of doubt. How could he, a 12-year-old boy with borrowed power, hope to defeat such an entity? The heart of flames pulsed within him, as if in answer to his doubts. This was why the Draconis had chosen him, not because he was the strongest or the wisest, but because he could do what they could not. What, exactly, that was, he still didn't know, but he trusted that the answer would come. Miles surged forward, straight toward the Hunter. As he approached, he felt its awareness shift toward him, an ancient malevolence focusing on the familiar energy signature of its old enemy. "That's right," Miles muttered. "I'm the one you want." He veered away from the battle, drawing the Hunter's attention with him. Just as he'd hoped, the massive entity changed course, abandoning the Alliance fleet to pursue the more enticing prey. Miles poured on speed, racing back towards Sanctuary Moon with the Hunter close behind. Through the bond with his Draconis essence, Miles sent a message to Eltaris: "Clear the observation platform. I'm bringing it home." He didn't wait for a response. The Hunter was gaining on him, tendrils of darkness reaching out to ensnare him. Miles dodged and weaved, using his smaller size and greater maneuverability to stay just ahead of the grasping shadows. The beacon spire grew larger in his vision as he approached Sanctuary Moon. Miles could see that the entire structure was now glowing with the same golden light that emanated from his transformed body. Eltaris had understood his plan and had activated the spire's ancient systems. Miles dove toward the observation platform, pulling up at the last moment to hover above the circular design at its center. The design was now pulsing with energy, responding to his presence. The hunter loomed above the moon, its vast form blocking out the stars. Tendrils of darkness reached down toward Miles, hungry for the draconis energy he carried. "Now!" Miles shouted, though there was no one to hear him in the vacuum of space. He plunged downward, driving himself into the center of the circular design. The moment he made contact, the heart of flames erupted within him. Power beyond imagining coursed through his body and into the spire. The beacon, designed millennia ago for exactly this purpose, focused and amplified the energy, projecting it upward in a column of golden fire that engulfed Miles and shot toward the hunter. The darkness screamed, a sound that existed not in air but in the mind, a psychic howl of rage and pain that echoed across light years. The tendrils that had been reaching for Miles disintegrated in the column of fire, but the hunter's core remained intact. It drew back, wounded but not defeated, gathering its strength for another attack. Miles hovered at the center of the energy column, his transformed body serving as both conduit and focus for the immense power flowing through the beacon spire. It wasn't enough. The heart of flames was hurting the hunter, but not destroying it. Something was missing. In that moment of realization, Miles finally understood why the Draconis had chosen him, why they had waited 300 years for the right vessel. The missing element was something the Draconis, for all their power and wisdom, had lacked. Hope. Not the desperate hope of a dying species making its last stand, but the boundless, irrational hope of a human child who believed that anything was possible. The Draconis had been warriors, protectors, but in the end, they had fought with the grim certainty that they were merely delaying the inevitable. They had never truly believed they could win, only that they could buy the galaxy more time. Miles believed. Even now, facing a cosmic horror that had consumed entire star systems, some part of him, the stubborn, optimistic, uniquely human part, refused to accept defeat as inevitable. He reached deeper into himself, past the Draconis essence, past the heart of flames, to his human core. There he found what he needed, not power, but purpose. The will not just to fight, but to prevail. "Enough," Miles said, his voice carrying impossible distances through the vacuum. "You don't belong here." He gathered all the energy flowing through him, the ancient power of the Draconis, the focused fury of the heart of flames, and his own indomitable human spirit, and released it in a single, perfect moment of defiance. The column of golden fire transformed, shifting from raw power to something more refined, more purposeful. It enveloped the hunter completely, not just attacking its form, but unmaking the very principles of void and entropy that gave it existence. The hunter fought back, darkness pushing against light in a primal conflict as old as the universe itself. For a moment, they seemed evenly matched, the unstoppable force of creation against the immovable fact of entropy. Then Miles did something unexpected. He laughed. The sound shouldn't have carried in the vacuum of space, but somehow it did, a boy's laugh, full of life and joy and absurdity. The incongruity of it, the sheer unlikeliness of a human child laughing in the face of cosmic destruction, created a ripple in reality. The hunter faltered, its darkness wavering. In that brief moment of uncertainty, the golden fire surged forward, piercing the entity's core. What followed wasn't an explosion, but an unraveling. The hunter didn't die so much as it ceased to be, its complex multidimensional structure collapsing in on itself until nothing remained but scattered particles of ordinary matter drifting harmlessly through space. Miles felt the immense drain on his energy immediately. The transformation that had sustained him began to reverse, the Draconis overlay fading as his body returned to its human form. The wings of light dissolved, and suddenly the vacuum of space was very real and very deadly to his now vulnerable human physiology. As consciousness began to slip away, Miles felt himself being caught in a containment field. Through blurring vision, he saw a rescue vessel approaching, Eltaris visible through the viewport, directing the operation. Then darkness claimed him, not the hungry void of the hunter, but the simple unconsciousness of a thoroughly exhausted 12-year-old boy. Miles awoke in a medical bay, the soft beeping of monitoring equipment a reassuring counterpoint to the memories of cosmic conflict that still echoed in his mind. He tried to sit up, only to find himself gently restrained by a medical field. "Easy, champion," said a familiar voice. "You've earned a rest." Miles turned his head to see his father sitting beside the bed, dark circles under his eyes suggesting he'd been there for some time. Behind him stood his mother, her expression a complex mixture of pride, relief, and lingering fear. "Mom? Dad?" Miles croaked, his throat dry. "How long was I out?" 3 days, his father replied, helping him sip water through a straw. "You gave us quite a scare." "I gave myself quite a scare," Miles admitted. He looked down at his arms, seeing only normal human skin where the golden scales had been. Is it gone?" His mother exchanged a glance with someone standing at the foot of the bed. Miles followed her gaze to find Eltaris and Counselor Thane watching him with matching expressions of gentle concern. "Not gone," Eltaris said softly. "Dormant. The Draconis essence has retreated to your core, conserving its strength. The transformation took a tremendous toll on your body." "But the hunter?" Miles asked, memories of the battle flooding back. "Did I really destroy a sovereign void hunter?" Thane finished for him. "Yes, Miles. You did what an entire fleet could not. What even the Draconis themselves could not do alone." Miles processed this information slowly. "There are more, though. I could feel them out there, watching. This was just the first." Eltaris nodded solemnly. "Yes, but thanks to you, we now know they can be defeated. The Alliance is already implementing new defenses based on what we learned from your battle. And you won't have to face the next one alone," Thane added. "The Council has authorized the formation of a new division, the Draconis Initiative. Warriors, scientists, and diplomats working together to prepare for the hunter's return. With you as our guide," Eltaris said, bowing slightly to Miles. "If you're willing." Miles looked from the Stellaran to the counselor, then to his parents. "Do I have a choice?" His father squeezed his hand. "Of course you do, son. Your mother and I have made that very clear to the council. You're 12 years old. You've done more than anyone could have asked already. But," his mother added gently, "if you want to help, we won't stop you. We'll be right there with you, every step of the way." Miles considered his options. He could try to go back to his normal life, school, hoverball, video games. Pretend that nothing had changed. But everything had changed. He had changed. The Draconis essence within him stirred at his thoughts, not controlling but responding. It wasn't a separate entity imposing its will, but a part of him now, a legacy he had accepted and made his own. "I want to help," Miles said finally. "But I also want to stay me. I'm not giving up school or friends or being a kid sometimes." Thane smiled. "I think we can work with that. The Draconis Initiative will need someone who remembers what we're fighting for, not just ancient power and cosmic battles, but ordinary lives and everyday joys." Speaking of ordinary lives, Miles's father interjected, "You're still grounded for wandering off during the field trip." Miles laughed, then winced as his sore body protested. Fair enough. As his parents and the officials continued discussing the details of his recovery and future role, Miles found his attention drawn to the window beside his bed. Beyond the medical facility, the rebuilt structures of Sanctuary Moon gleamed in the light of the twin suns. Ships moved through the sky, people went about their lives, and the stars shone undimmed by the shadow of the hunter. He had preserved all of this, not alone, but as a bridge between the ancient power of the Draconis and the resilient spirit of humanity. Neither would have been enough on its own, but together they had accomplished the impossible. Miles Parker, 12 years old with untied shoelaces and the essence of an extinct species bonded to his soul, smiled as he watched the ordinary miracle of life continuing around him. There would be more battles ahead, more hunters to face. But for now, the galaxy was safe, and that was enough. 6 months later, Miles stood on the observation platform of the rebuilt beacon spire. The structure had been damaged during his confrontation with the Void Hunter, but the Alliance had restored it with improvements suggested by the Draconis knowledge Miles now carried. He wasn't alone. Beside him stood Eltaris, serene as always, and a small group of other beings, the core team of the Draconis Initiative. There was Kira Chun, a brilliant human xenobiologist who had been studying the Draconis for decades. Vex, a Taraxis weapons specialist whose 6 limbs were currently managing multiple holographic displays. And Solon, a Lumion energy expert whose crystalline form refracted the sunlight into rainbow patterns across the platform. The detection grid is online, Vex reported, manipulating one of the displays. If another hunter enters Alliance space, we'll know immediately. And the response fleet is at 70% readiness, added Commander Reeve, a stern-faced human woman who had been assigned to coordinate the military aspects of the initiative. We're still retrofitting the older vessels with the new shield technology. Miles nodded, taking in the information. In the months since his battle with the Hunter, he had adjusted to his new role as advisor to the initiative. He still attended school, a new one, on Sanctuary Moon, where his parents had relocated for his special educational needs, but 3 days a week he worked with the team, sharing the Draconis knowledge as it continued to unfold in his mind. What about the outposts? Miles asked. The outer colonies would be the first targets if the Hunters return in force. We've established emergency evacuation protocols, Commander Reeve assured him. And each outpost has been equipped with a miniature version of the beacon, capable of generating a defensive field for up to 72 hours. It won't be enough if a sovereign comes, Miles said quietly. The team fell silent, acknowledging the truth of his words. The smaller beacons could handle lesser hunters, but a sovereign would require direct intervention that only Miles could provide. We continue to work on alternatives, Kira said gently. She had become something of a mentor to Miles, helping him navigate the complex intersection of his human life and his Draconis responsibilities. The essence you carry is teaching us more every day. Miles nodded, grateful for her optimism even if he didn't entirely share it. The Draconis essence was both gift and burden, a responsibility he had accepted but sometimes still struggled with, especially on days when he just wanted to be a normal kid playing hoverball with his friends. A chime sounded from Vex console, interrupting his thoughts. Incoming transmission from High Counselor Draken, the Taraxis announced. A holographic image of the Krell appeared in the center of the platform. Draken had become one of Miles's strongest allies in the aftermath of the battle. His initial skepticism transformed into firm support for the initiative. Miles, the High Counselor, greeted him with unusual informality. I have news from the Deep Space Observatory at Rigel Prime. They've detected an anomaly at the edge of the Cygnus Void, an energy signature similar to the Hunter you encountered, but different. Miles felt the Draconis essence stir within him, responding to the news with a mixture of recognition and uncertainty. Different how? It appears to be communicating, Draken said, sending a signal toward Alliance space. Our linguists are analyzing it now, but the preliminary translation suggests. He hesitated. Suggests what? Commander Reeve prompted. A warning, Draken finished. Or perhaps a greeting. The signal contains references to the Draconis and to what the translator is calling the bridge. We believe it may be referring to you, Miles. Miles exchanged a glance with Eltaris. The Stellaran looked as surprised as he felt. You think there might be friendly void entities out there? Ones that don't want to eat stars and destroy worlds. Perhaps, Draken allowed. Or it could be a trap. We simply don't know enough yet. Miles closed his eyes, consulting the Draconis knowledge within him. There were fragments, incomplete memories of other entities that existed in the void between galaxies, not all of them hostile. The ancient Draconis had called them the Shapers, beings who created rather than consumed. I need to see the full signal, Miles decided. The Draconis memories have something about entities called Shapers. This might be one of them. I'll have the data transmitted to the initiative immediately, Draken promised. In the meantime, Remain alert. If this is indeed a friendly contact, it represents an unprecedented opportunity. If not, we'll be ready, Miles assured him. After the transmission ended, the team dispersed to prepare for the incoming data, leaving Miles alone with Eltaris on the platform. You have come far in a short time, Miles Parker, the Stellaran observed. 6 months ago, you were a child on a field trip. Now you advise high counselors and prepare for potential first contact with a new cosmic entity. Miles shrugged, scuffing his shoe against the platform floor. I still feel like that kid most of the time, just with really weird homework. Eltaris made the musical sound that passed for Stellaran laughter. Perhaps that is why the Draconis chose you. You retain your humanity despite the power you wield. The Guardian's cosmic eyes studied him thoughtfully. What do you hope to find in this signal? Allies against the Hunters? Maybe, Miles admitted, but also answers. He looked out at the stars, feeling both small and vast simultaneously. The Draconis sacrificed everything to protect the galaxy, but they never really understood what they were fighting against or why. If there are other void entities out there, ones that create instead of destroy, maybe we can learn from them. Maybe we can find a better way. Eltaris placed a six-fingered hand on Miles's shoulder. A worthy goal, and one I believe you may actually achieve. The Stellaran gazed upward, toward the distant point where the mysterious signal originated. The universe is vaster and stranger than even my long-lived species comprehends. Perhaps it takes a human child bonded with an ancient power to bridge such cosmic divides. Miles smiled at the Guardian's confidence. He didn't know what the future held, whether the signal represented new allies, new threats, or something beyond current understanding. But whatever came next, he would face it as both Miles Parker, 12-year-old boy from Earth, and as the vessel of the ancient Draconis legacy. 3 weeks later, the beacon spire hummed with activity. The mysterious signal had been fully decoded, and the results had thrown the entire initiative into a controlled frenzy of preparation. Miles stood at the center of it all, watching as the final adjustments were made to the enhanced communication array. "Are you sure about this?" his father asked, standing beside him with an expression of barely concealed worry. "Nobody would think less of you if you decided to wait." Miles shook his head. "It has to be now, Dad. The Shapers won't wait forever." The signal had indeed come from the entities the Draconis memories identified as Shapers, cosmic beings similar to the Void Hunters in origin, but fundamentally different in nature. Where the Hunters consumed, the Shapers created. They had reached out specifically because they had sensed the unique bond between human and Draconis, a combination they believed might finally end the age-old conflict that threatened the galaxy. "All systems are ready," Kira reported, checking the final calibrations. "The transmission will be focused through you, just like when you channeled the Heart of Flames. But instead of an attack, you'll be projecting communication." Miles nodded and took his position at the center of the platform. The circular design, rebuilt after his battle with the Hunter, now contained additional elements designed to enhance psychic resonance. "Remember," Commander Reeve cautioned, "if anything feels wrong, anything at all, we terminate immediately. We're not taking chances with your safety." "Understood," Miles agreed, though privately he knew that once the connection was established, it wouldn't be so easy to break. The Shapers existed partly in dimensions beyond normal space-time. Opening a channel to them meant opening himself to possibilities beyond predictable control. He closed his eyes, focusing on the Draconis essence within. In the months since the battle, he had learned to access its power more selectively, without the full transformation that had nearly killed him. The golden patterns appeared on his skin, more controlled now, tracing elegant designs along his arms and across his face. Initiating transmission in 3, 2, 1. Energy surged through the platform and into Miles. Unlike the destructive power he had channeled against the Hunter, this energy was pure communication, a bridge between realms. Miles felt his consciousness expanding, stretching across the vast distances of space toward the source of the signal. And then, contact. Miles gasped as his mind touched something ancient and vast. Not one consciousness, but many, joined in harmonious unity. The Shapers. We greet you, bridge child, came the thought, not in words but in concepts that unfurled in his mind like flowering stars. Asterisk you who carry the essence of our old friends. Asterisk, I greet you in return, Miles projected, both speaking aloud and sending the thought across the connection. The Draconists are gone, but their legacy continues through me. Asterisk not gone. Transformed. As all things must be. Asterisk the communication was accompanied by a cascade of images, stars being born, galaxies forming, life evolving across countless worlds. Asterisk the cycle continues. Asterisk, the hunters have returned, Miles said. We defeated one, but there will be more. Asterisk yes. The devourers follow their nature, as we follow ours. Creation and destruction, eternally balanced. Asterisk there was no judgment in the thought, merely acceptance of cosmic reality. But the balance has shifted, Miles argued, drawing on both Draconist knowledge and human determination. The hunters don't just consume what's necessary. They take everything, leaving nothing for new life to emerge. A sensation like thoughtful consideration flowed through the connection. Asterisk you speak truth, bridge child. The harmony has been disrupted since the Draconists departed. This is why we have sought you. Asterisk, can you help us fight them? Miles asked directly. Asterisk not as you imagine. We do not destroy, but we can teach, guide, provide what was lost when the Draconists sacrificed themselves. Asterisk the connection deepened, and suddenly Miles understood. The Shapers weren't offering weapons or direct intervention. They were offering knowledge. The missing pieces of the Draconist legacy, the parts that had been lost in the desperate final encoding of their essence into the egg. The transformation, Miles whispered. The full power of the Draconists. Asterisk yes. What you experienced was but a fraction. The egg contained survival, not mastery. We offer completion. Asterisk Miles hesitated. The partial transformation had nearly killed him. What would the complete version do? Would he remain human at all? As if sensing his doubt, a new sensation flowed through the connection, something surprisingly like kindness. Asterisk fear not, bridge child. You were chosen because you are human. Your species contains multitudes, the capacity to change while remaining true to your core self. This is why the Draconists sought you. Asterisk, not just any human, Miles realized. Me specifically? Asterisk yes. For generations, the egg tested those who approached. Many had power. Many had knowledge. You had something rarer, balance. The ability to hold opposing truths without breaking. To be both child and warrior. To face darkness with laughter. To remain yourself while becoming more. Asterisk Miles felt tears forming in his eyes. Though whether from emotion or the strain of the connection, he couldn't tell. What do I need to do? Asterisk open yourself. Accept what we offer. Then choose, always choose, how to use it. Asterisk Miles took a deep breath and mentally stepped forward into the connection, dropping the last barriers around his consciousness. Knowledge flooded in. Not just information, but understanding. Not just power, but wisdom in its use. The complete legacy of the Draconists, their triumphs and failures, their discoveries and regrets. And with it, something from the Shapers themselves, a perspective that spanned billions of years and countless galaxies. For a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, Miles Parker was both infinitesimally small and cosmically vast, a 12-year-old boy and an ageless awareness that encompassed stars. Then, with gentle precision, the Shapers began to withdraw, leaving the knowledge integrated into his being rather than overwhelming it. Asterisk the choice remains yours, bridge child. Always yours. Asterisk as the connection faded, Miles heard one final thought. Asterisk we will watch. We will wait. When the time comes, call to us again. Asterisk Miles opened his eyes to find everyone on the platform staring at him in amazement. The golden patterns on his skin had changed, becoming more complex, more beautiful, no longer just echoing the Draconists, but incorporating something uniquely his own. Miles, his father asked cautiously, "Are you okay?" Miles smiled, feeling more himself than he ever had before. "Yeah, Dad. I'm good." He looked around at the assembled team. "Really good, actually." Kira stepped forward, scanner in hand. "Your readings are... I've never seen anything like this. The Draconis essence has fully integrated with your cellular structure, but without overriding your human DNA. It's a perfect symbiosis." "That's what the Shapers gave me," Miles explained. "The missing piece. How to be both without losing either." He flexed his hand, watching as the golden patterns flowed beneath his skin, responsive to his will rather than emerging in moments of stress or need. "They also showed me how to control the transformation completely." "And the hunters?" Commander Reeve asked, ever focused on the tactical situation. "They're still coming," Miles confirmed. "But now we have options beyond just fighting them directly." He gestured, and a holographic display appeared above his palm, a display he had created with a mere thought. "The Shapers showed me technologies the Draconis were developing before the end, ways to redirect the hunters' hunger toward dying stars and black holes, places where their consumption wouldn't harm living worlds. Coexistence rather than extermination," Eltaris mused. "A solution worthy of both Draconis wisdom and human ingenuity." Miles nodded. "It won't be easy. Some of the hunters are too far gone, too consumed by their own hunger to be redirected. Those will still have to fight." His expression grew serious. "But now we have a real chance, not just to survive the coming darkness, but to restore balance to the galaxy." 1 month later, Miles stood at the helm of the Initiative's flagship, the newly commissioned Draconis Dawn. The vessel represented the pinnacle of Alliance technology, enhanced with innovations derived from the knowledge Miles had received from the Shapers. Beside him stood his parents, still adjusting to their son's dual nature, but fiercely supportive. Behind them, the core team of the Initiative prepared for their first mission, not to battle a hunter, but to establish the first redirection beacon at the edge of the Cygnus Void. "Final system check complete," Vex reported. "All green across the board. Course laid in and approved by Alliance Command," added Commander Reeve. Miles nodded, feeling a profound sense of rightness. In the weeks since the contact with the Shapers, he had found his balance, attending school 3 days a week, training with the Initiative 2 days, and reserving weekends for being just a kid. His classmates had mostly adjusted to having a cosmic hero among them, though he still got challenged to use his dragon powers to cheat at hoverball with annoying regularity. "Ready when you are, Miles," his mother said softly. Miles placed his hand on the ship's control interface. Golden energy flowed from his fingers into the system, activating technologies that merged Draconis principles with Alliance engineering. "Let's go make some new friends," he said with a grin, "and maybe teach some old enemies new tricks." As the Draconis Dawn rose from Sanctuary Moon and accelerated toward the stars, Miles Parker, 12-year-old human boy and vessel of an ancient legacy, looked to the future with hope. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he would face them as himself, both more and less than he had ever imagined he could be. The dragon had awakened, humanity had stepped forward, and together they would forge a path that neither could have walked alone. And that was the end of the story. If you listened all the way to here, don't forget to leave feedback about what you thought of the story in the comments, whether positive or negative. Your feedback helps us improve. Also, leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And I'll leave here on the screen another video that I'm sure you'll like. Big hug, and see you in the next story.